Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 23rd version of Crossing the Divide, the local political talk show that just won't go away. My name is Glenn Albanesius, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend Ken Fracasso. And before we get started, I just want to share a little bit of a chuckle that we got the other day, and I know that in the past, Ken and I have been accused of being members of a political gang, and I'm happy to report that we no longer qualify as gang members, but we have been dubbed as a myopic duo by our local editor-in-chief of the Winsted paper here, Mike Marciano. He's a cunning linguist and has come up with a brand new title for us, and I wear it proudly, as I'm sure my good friend Ken does. We want to tonight, again, very carefully as we have in the past, bring the viewers through the circumstances that have kind of led Winsted up to where we are right now financially and politically. We are headed to an election in a couple weeks that both Ken and I feel pretty strongly is going to set the tone and direction for Winsted for a good time to come. And we believe that the voters will have an opportunity this time to certainly make some significant changes. We've put I put 4 years in, Ken has put in 6 years, and we've pretty much stuck to our message for that entire period. As you'll see tonight with some pretty specific details that we've been right on the money, ladies and gentlemen. There have been a lot of people that have not agreed with us over that time, but are slowly but surely coming around to understand that what we said and the way we said it is really the truth, and going forward we want to make sure that the voters are aware of that. So I'll turn this over as always to Ken and start you with some of the details.
Well, let's jump right in. To begin with, we have to start out with a current financial summary. We have a slide, I believe. Thank you. All these numbers are provided to us by our finance director, Robin Manuel. As you can see, the projected revenues in cash through December 31st of this year are as follows. It's been reported to us Monday night we have $2.9 million cash on hand. We are planning on receiving a $2 million ECS payment at the end of this month. We are also planning on taking in $1.6 million in early tax payments. Now, this was based on last year's revenues at this time. And please note the quotations here, that this is an assumption. There are no guarantees. And then we've also been told that we expect to receive approximately $180,000 of other revenue, which is everything from the town clerk to building department to LOSIP grants. So that, folks, adds up to $6.7 million in actual cash, projected cash and revenues. However, as we further down the line here, our expenses through December of this year consist of $1 million in unpaid bills, which includes an insurance bill that's over 120 days past due already, and $7.9 million in town and school expenses. That unfortunately totals $8.9 million. So as you can see, we're at deficit already. So to make it to January, this means that we must leave at least $1.3 million in unpaid bills behind. And we're speaking now of borrowing $2.5 million against the GAN note that must be paid back in April. And that, folks, is under a couple of conditions. One is that we get approval from the bank, which we have not as of yet, and then it still needs to go to referendum, and the voters need to vote on it. So both of these are well, I guess I would say long shots at best. So where does that leave us? Even with a $2 to $2.5 million grant anticipation note, this borrowing will not cover our expenses. We need to pass over more bills that are due that need to be paid, and the majority has no plan if this borrowing does not happen. And Glenn and I brought this up at Monday night selectmen's meeting, And we proposed a 3 mil supplemental tax that would at least take care of the past due bills. And the silence was deafening. I mean, there was absolutely no discussion whatsoever. I spoke of the motion, Glenn seconded it. Mary Ann asked if there was any discussion. You could hear a pin drop. There was absolutely nothing.
Right.
And that just tells me one thing. The other side of the table knows that we need the supplemental tax, but they have just dug their heels in and they absolutely refuse to do what's right for the town. And we went back to when we crafted this budget, and we've said this, over and over again, that we would not be part of any budget that didn't include a line item to take care of this deficit that we knew existed back then. And now it's come back to bite them in the ass, and they do everything in their power, not to do anything to address the problem. But this is nothing new, folks. This is something they've done year after year after year. You can go back 10 or 12 years. When it started out with the silly oil tank at Pearson School, and the OCR complaint, the OCR complaint that was brought forth by the Democrat fellowman Art Melcher, and they just passed the buck along and did absolutely nothing to rectify these problems. But now we're facing some serious problems. This money issue is not going to go away. It's not going to evaporate. The state is not going to come in and give us money ahead of time or give us a bag of money to get us out of this hole. It's not going to happen.
Right. And repeatedly, the state has told us in their correspondence to us that, the fixes that have been proposed are temporary, but the root of the problem is the fact that we've got to clear up those old bills.
Right.
And they have said time and time again, and you can list the people that, Dennis Dix, Ben Barnes, all these people have said basically the same thing.
Right.
Winston needs to address the problem, the root of the problem. And Ken and I have done that right from the start, and I said earlier on when I opened the show, we've not strayed from our message as far as that goes. Politically, I think for the Democrats to dig their heels in here on not really addressing the issue, it may gain them some votes for people that don't want to, face the music and say it and understand that we need the taxes.
Right.
But we clearly understand that if we don't do this, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what the future holds. We can guess.
Right.
You said it pretty clearly the other night.
Oh yeah, nothing good, that's for sure.
Right.
But I just want to step back for just a moment to the meeting, because I sat there and I was dumbfounded at the silence in the room. It usually doesn't take much, to irritate or agitate one of them on the other side of the table, that they just love to banter back and forth with some kind of. And there's probably, I can't think of any single issue in the 6 years that I've been a sitting selectman that there's been anything more important than this.
Right.
Not a thing. Not even close.
Right.
But like I said, I don't know if it was their pre-meeting huddle that they had where Mary Ann informed all of them that we expect them to bring this up, but we're not even going to talk about it. She said time and time again from day one that she didn't want a supplemental tax on her watch. And the three that are running, the Democrats that are incumbents that are running, Clausen, Perez, and Ronzullo, probably feel that it's political suicide. I, for one, think it's political suicide that they have not addressed this problem. And I think the majority of people in this town feel the same way. But, we'll see what that leads us in a couple of weeks. But just one more thing about the GAN note that I want to make perfectly clear. Even if the bank does give us the money, even if the voters do approve of the referendum, this does not solve the problem. We're going to be right back here at the end of April or the first part of May in the same predicament.
Right.
Maybe worse.
Right.
Because, also at the meeting, Robin told us that there's, the debt was declining for a while, but now it's starting to go back in the other direction. So the debt's climbing. So, we still have a long ways to go. Also, I just want to touch on briefly, in today's Citizen, I just want to clarify a few things. I did not speak to the writer of this article, Mercy, I believe. I haven't even been introduced to her. But there were some inconsistencies there and some incorrect statements. I don't believe that the state is going to show up with any money. I've known this all along. And we've been told repeatedly, as you just mentioned, that this is a town's problem. We need to fix it ourselves. The Municipal Advisory Board spoke of this in April. Dennis Dix, our financial advisor, spoke to it in September and again in October. And as you stated, Ben Barnes from OPM. They said that this is a town problem. We need to fix it. And they told us, if you need to issue a supplemental tax, then so be it. do what you have to do. You know, they mentioned the tax anticipation notes and a few other things, but, you know, they are not going to give us money, that excess money earlier, you know, the April payment anytime earlier. They would never set a precedent like that for the entire state, because once they open up that door, there's no turning back. And, you know, we knew that as well as a few other people, but for whatever reason, it hasn't seemed to sunk into the Democrats', you know, skull. But, and we also, as we said before, brought this up during the budget preparation time last year. All 7 of us, including the town manager, knew that there were unpaid bills. We knew this. And we said, Glenn and I said, that we wanted this included in the budget, the very first line item, to take care of this deficit. And they just totally ignored it. So once again, we have Selectmen Perez, Clausen, and Ronzullo voting not to put this in the budget and address it back when we should have. They said that we have 8 years to pay these bills. Where the number 8 came from is beyond me. I don't think anyone at Public Works, or I don't think Mary Ann as a school teacher wants to wait 8 years to get a paycheck.
Right.
So I don't know where they came up with this 8 years. The other night, it was mentioned that we could pay it over 3 or 4 years. There was some, I guess, back and forth in the blog. I didn't see it, but I heard about it, that, you know, we can pay debt over 3 or 4 years. Once again, I don't know, maybe the town attorney wants to wait 4 years. Maybe our auditors, King and King, want to wait 3 or 4 years. I don't know. Maybe the town manager wants to defer his paycheck for 4 years. But I don't think so. But once again, folks, these Democrats were given a second bite at the apple Monday night when they could have done the right thing for the taxpayers in this town and voted that supplemental tax. But once again, they refused.
Right.
So this is where we are.
Right. And the ticking time bomb, too, is, Ken, is I brought up a few times that, you know, this is all current, you know, bills that we have. I mean, if the town for, you know, and hopefully it will never happen, you know, incurs another lawsuit, or a boiler goes down, or any number of things that could happen, that's only going to add to the deficit, because the money's not there to pay for it.
Exactly.
Now, we don't wish those things to happen, believe me when I tell you that. But again, as you know, sitting on the finance board, you have to factor in reality, and in life, stuff happens. I mean, there's a phrase that stuff happens all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, in Winsted, it happens more often than not. And that's the part I think I fear more than anything else. I mean, we were challenged the other night by Charlene, you know, what's 3 mills going to do? And your answer was perfect.
Well, it was right on. I mean, it is. It's going to take care of the past due bills,
Right.
which is what's, you know, belaboring us right now.
Right.
And here again, both of us had said, until we're blue in the face, you know, that we need to restructure town. You know, the benefits, the pay. I mean, there was an article in the paper last, I believe, Sunday about the teachers. You know, they put less hours in than anyone in the entire state, or at least in the region that they surveyed. Less time,
More days off.
more days off,
Right.
and the pay was like pretty equal, if
Right.
not higher than some or most of the towns. Right. So I mean, these are all things that, you know, need to be addressed, and it's just something that we, like once again I said, we've been over this time and time again, and unfortunately it's fallen on deaf ears. So once again, folks, I mean, I'm sure that there's going to be diehard Democrats that are going to vote for these people in a couple weeks. But I mean, if the majority of people in this town want something to change, that you have to not vote for Perez, Clausen, and Ronzullo. Because without doing this, there will be absolutely no change. We're going to be in the same status quo for another cycle, and it's just, you know, it's got to change.
Right. Well, George said at one meeting that, you know, this needs to be addressed at the next, you know, budget session, which puts it out another at least 6 months, you know, more. I mean, that all starts in March. But as we know, if we borrow the money, if we can get the money now, we're going to be in the same position. Like Ken said, you know, are you going to miss, you know, your winter vacation, or are you going to miss graduation?
Right.
What's it going to be? And you know, we feel pretty strongly we need to avoid both those things. And I think the supplemental tax, you know, it's not anything that we would ever, you know, have, you know, wanted out of the gate. But it is where we are, ladies and gentlemen. You got to face facts.
You know, it's a little ironic too, looking at it. I mean, because we're in this instance, I'd say that we're wearing a different coat. I mean, typically Republicans don't call for a large tax increase, you know, but neither Glenn nor I are comfortable making the town of Winchester, or turning the town of Winchester into a deadbeat that just doesn't pay its bills. I mean, and on the other hand, the Democrats have always been tax and spend, but now they've added that they don't pay their bills to that list.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a bad combination in of itself. The other thing is, I'm sure everyone is aware, neither Glenn nor I have chosen to run for office again. We're just trying to do what we've always tried to do, what's right for the town. You know, we've never had any personal agendas, personal gains out of this whatsoever. You know, I've been born and raised, and I'll probably die in this town. And, you know, we just wanted to leave it in a better position than it was when we got here. And we're always been for the town. As we said earlier, we did discuss very briefly the supplemental tax at Monday's night's meeting. But with no plan B in place, you know, I think that if the loan doesn't come through, if it doesn't get voted on, if we don't get that money, you know, the state is going to do something to educate the children in this town. They're not just going to let us fall by the wayside.
Yeah, they won't let them close the schools.
Absolutely not.
I don't think so.
You know, and at some point, whether there's a state takeover or if there's just, you know, some kind of a committee or whatever that comes in and decides what the mill rate is that we need, believe me, folks, it will be more than 3 mills. I envision them leaving the police department and the teachers and the fire department intact, but everyone else, I could see being furloughed. I could see them closing town hall. I could see them shutting down public works, with the exception of the water and sewer plant. I mean, I envision these things happening if, in fact, you know, a supplemental tax is not issued and we don't find our way out of this mess. Because someone's going to come in and take the bull by the horns because the people here just can't seem to do it.
Right. And the budget that was put forward, and I distinctly remember, you know, Charlene, you know, shouting to the heavens that, you know, support the plan that the town manager has crafted, you know, pay more taxes. Well, there was a tax increase. For those of us that had their, you know, taxes increase, some people saw less, some people saw more. I was one that saw more. But this was the plan. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, if it was a plan, it's stubbed its toe, because we're in a situation now where we're out of money and the schools are in jeopardy, and our attempt to, you know, throw a real solution on the table was swept aside the other night in a 4-2 vote with no discussion. You can't, you know, you can't paint that picture any clearer than that.
Right.
There is no solution at this point other than raising that supplemental tax. And that's not money that Ken and I are sitting here advocating that we tax people and hurt people to just, you know, spend money on, you know, willy-nilly programs or anything like that. It's to pay bills that we've already incurred.
Right.
And, you know, that's where I think the distinction I want to make tonight, you know, as our days, you know, wind down as sitting selectmen, is that, you know, we're going to encourage people to think long and hard about supporting that supplemental tax if it ever does come back up. But beyond that, we want people to know that there has to be, on the backside of that, a real change in the way Winston does business. And Ken and I have talked at length that, you know, that's going to be a painful thing for people to come up with a 3 or 4 or whatever, you know, how many mills that is. But they need to demand that whoever's in power make those structural changes, the reduction, you know, the restructuring, and the reinvestment that this town needs. Those 3 words, Ken, I mean, we've been spanked, you know, a lot over those. But I'm telling you, I sit here tonight, those were the best 3 things that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, I think the Democrats had, what, building community and turning the corner together and trust is earned. I ask you, viewers, you know, weigh those political slogans against where we're at right now, and I'll take reduce, restructure, and reinvest any day of the week.
I agree with you. Well, let's move along here, because I know that we have a lot of stuff we want to cover in a short period of time. The next thing I'd like to bring up is about the Board of Education. I said this is also a major source of problems, and I believe we have a slide with a timeline that I would like to go over with you. We're going to go way back in February of 2011, when the Board of Education submitted a budget stating that due to consolidation with Gilbert School, one of the 3, that they would be able to close one of the 3 public schools. Now, this was in the budget presentation by then Superintendent Blaise Salerno. No one held a gun to this man's head. I said, these were his words. And, and this is the problem that we've incurred, over the years. And then in June 2011, the town approved the budget using the Board of Education assumptions. The following month in July, state law reaffirms that consolidation and declining enrollment, which was another major factor, were reasons to lower the MBR. The next month, in August of 2011, the Winston Board of Education says that it will not live with a lower MBR and refuses to close the school building. Instead, it operates all 3 buildings at a third capacity, or in some instances, less. November, when Mary Ann and the gang came marching downtown, the newly elected supermajority told the Board of Ed to spend the 1.3 more than was in the budget. However, there were no revenues raised to cover that spending. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the beginning of our deficit spending. Then the following year in July, the Board of Ed has $1.2 million in unpaid bills left from the previous year. This is the start of the annual structural deficit. And it wasn't, and this is when they were aware that we had these problems, yet they did not address them. And then in April of this year, the town manager acknowledged that there was almost $2.5 million in unpayable bills. That means we had no money. So, that's the path that got us to where we are right now. And so that's what we're left with.
Right.
And it's a mess.
A big steaming pile of mess.
Yeah. So once again, we're looking at an election in a couple of weeks. Last Thursday, I guess, right? Correct? Was the Board of Education debate. And unfortunately, none of the Democratic candidates felt it important enough to show up. Those candidates were Royer, Shaughnessy, and Melcher. There was no phone call, from what I understand, saying that they would not attend for given any reason. I mean, it blows my mind that they could be that arrogant that they wouldn't show up. And I know the Gilbert students put a lot of effort into this debate. I mean, it did go on, but let's face it, with only the Republicans there,
right.
And Doc Dutton was there, who maybe he should have stayed home, because I didn't watch it live. I wasn't there, but I did watch it afterwards. And a few of the comments that he made were, as equally mind-blowing. That basically said that the Winston voters, it was too hard to explain that the Winston voters weren't smart enough to understand the issues. And he said that 3 buildings were cheaper to operate than 2. And he said, "Trust me on this one."
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know where that comes from, but it's like I said, it's completely mind-boggling. I mean, all he did was insult the people. So, as I said, maybe it would have been better off if he stayed home.
Right. I want to just backtrack so that we don't get accused of not being, truthful, because I guess Chris Royer did have a goat issue, and that was brought up at some point after the debate started. But as far as the other 2, I don't think there was any indication that they were going to show up.
Yeah, but how about a phone call?
Either way, yeah. And I think my son he was involved in the debate, and I think that it was interesting to see Doc Dutton sitting on one side and the 3 others on the other side, and it was certainly, I think, kind of a slap to have the people not show up and offer a full debate. But be that as it may, we move on from there.
Right. But as we stated, the Republican candidates did show up, and they did focus on some things. The state test scores, those were up. The 7th and 8th grade reading level, that were drastically low. Those have improved dramatically. And I believe that Principal Strauss was named the Connecticut Principal of the Year.
Right.
And I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. Yep. I mean, once again, I know we went through a lot of turmoil when we suggested sending the 7th and 8th grade, and we met with a lot of opposition. But I don't think there's a single parent now. I mean, you've talked to more of them than I have, that said that it was the best thing that ever could have happened to their students,
Yeah,
their children. I mean.
right. And I know I talked to people that were really either on the fence or against the move, figuring it was going to decimate the lower grades. But I think that once the parents got their kids up there, I know the principal Strauss has, he's really driven those kids to much higher standards than they have in the past, and I think Gilbert is on the right track. And clearly it took a little bit of reality for parents to get to that point. And I think that that part of the equation is moving in the right direction.
Right.
And I give a lot of people that give them credit that were against it, but now I think do support the school. And,
Well, I would dare to say, I think the single best thing as far as education is concerned in the town of Winchester is the Gilbert School. I think they've done a phenomenal job with the 7th and 8th graders. Let's all be aware, the other side, Royer, Dutton, Shaughnessy, and Melcher, they're looking to end the relationship with Gilbert School. They want to send your children to Torrington.
right.
So remember that when you're going to the polls in a couple of weeks.
Right, and I know that's a crusade that several of them been on in earnest for a couple years,
Right.
and I just, that scares the living daylights out of me, to be honest with you, because I think the support that our local schools need to come from the board members, and I know that there's some real animosity with a couple members in Gilbert, and it shows. And unfortunately, I think it's gotten in the way of making good decisions, and I hope that it doesn't come down to the point where a vote's taken and they voucher the kids out to wherever, because I think that's going to be the beginning of the end.
Right. Well, a lot of stuff to digest here. I don't even know how much time we have left here.
Yeah, I think with 3 or 4 minutes.
That's
Ken.
it?
Yeah.
Gee, I would like to read a letter that was given to me by Dick Nolet, who's the chairman of Water and Sewer. I'll try to read this as quick as I can. Starting from the beginning, I just want to remind everyone, this is from Dick Nolet. I'm just reading it. Starting from the beginning, a year ago, a resident was putting in a sewer line with the Public Works Department. The contractor was a local one, and the director of Public Works was Jim Rotundo, who's no longer employed by the town. Certain selectmen who don't care for the contractor or myself have claimed that I personally gave an approval for the sewer connection, which is not true at all. As chairman of the commission, I do not have and never have been given any approval for any sewer or water lines. This is the Public Works Director's responsibility, or by appointment of Jim McCarthy. Jim Rotundo brought the request to the commission, and we as a commission had a meeting with Jim and agreed to support Jim's decision. Moving on. The Board of Selectmen claimed that Henry Centrella stole millions of dollars from the town, and in their last-ditch effort, they say that Water and Sewer owes millions to the town. They will not answer that question, nor do they offer any proof as to why they say Water and Sewer owes the town. They need to prove this. They can't because they don't know for sure. Water and Sewer, for 20 years, has paid the salaries of 10 full-time town employees in the Public Works Department. This should be so, in order to maintain the water and sewer plants and their services. All Public Works employees share the work to help each other's department out within Public Works if needed. However, what they don't want you to know, and the part that you don't hear them say, is that Water and Sewer Commission also pays a percentage of 10 or more town hall employees' salaries. So in fact, Water and Sewer Commission has been subsidizing the town for years. Now we at the Water and Sewer Commission has known that we were paying a part of many town hall employees' salaries. However, Henry did these percentages and for years told us that we had lots of money and we could afford this process. We did not wish to hurt the town in any way because we understood that the town could not pass a budget. And as a board, through many talks with Henry, it was decided that we did not want to hurt the employees either. So we continued to pay part of those salaries. During all of this, they are now forced by the arrest of the past finance director to finally let you know that all the funds in town are missing money and the town is messed up so bad that they don't know where it all or where it went. All departments are responsible, not just Water and Sewer. Town Attorney Kevin Nelligan has made several public statements to the Board of Selectmen several times that Water and Sewer Commission was never to blame for this mess. But certain members of the Board of Selectmen aren't satisfied with this. They are trying to take Water and Sewer away from the Commission because they say that we have mismanaged the money. We as a Commission trusted Henry as everyone else did. What we did differently than the Board of Selectmen Time?
Yeah,
Well, maybe we can read this again some other time for you, finish it up. We'll be back next week
Yep.
with, hopefully with a couple of candidates for the Board of Selectmen.
thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning
ladies.
in.